I really need to start setting an alarm when I take a nap. This isn't a traditional Steam Deck review. If you're looking for tech specs, performance statistics, battery life tests, or anything like that, there are tons of fantastic videos on this site that can break it all down for you. If you must know my elevator pitch review, here. The Steam Deck is a great value for the price that combines solid performance with all the utility of a full-blown computer with the portability of a Switch, provided you have a backpack big enough to carry it. If you want a ton of raw power, you might have to look toward one of the more powerful competitors, but if price is a factor, you can get your hands on an LCD Steam Deck for $350 at the time of this writing. Instead, this video is about one of those things you buy for yourself that becomes much more than the sum of its parts and becomes an integral part of your day-to-day. That exact thing you needed at the exact right time that makes all the difference in the world and walks the line between utility and sentimentality. This also is not a teardown of any Steam Deck competitors. If you're firmly in the ROG Ally family, good for you. I'm happy you enjoy it, and I am glad this segment of the gaming PC market is thriving and exists. Let me know what kind of cool things you've done with it or things that surprised you about it. This might also be kind of a slow burn, so bear with me as I get to my ultimate point, that the Steam Deck expanded my horizons in computing far more than I ever thought possible. Alright, with that out of the way, let's get on with it. I was in college for a long time.
You know, a lot of people go to college for 7 years.
I know. They're called doctors.
Toward the last few years of my schooling career, each semester I would buy something for myself that would improve my class, work, and personal life balance in some way or another. As a journalist with a focus on print, I spent a lot of time at a keyboard typing out my stories. I noticed that after long typing sessions on those terrible chiclet keyboards that come with Macs, my hands would get fatigued. From there, I dove into the world of mechanical keyboards and found a keyboard more comfortable to type on for hours a day. I found myself sinking way too much time on my phone, so I bought a Kindle to get back into reading. I spent a lot of time writing interview notes on pen and paper. I bought a pen I enjoyed writing with and a bullet journal that allowed me to section off notes, to-do lists, and financial tracking. Between being a full-time student, working 4 to 5 days a week, and balancing all that while being an editor-in-chief of the school paper, that pen and journal changed how I organized my life and finally scheduled a routine for myself that gave me time for everything I needed. Half a decade later, and I still consider my journal one of the most important things I carry with me every day. These few things were meaningful investments in myself that made lasting differences in my life and allowed me to both take control of my time back and enjoy daily tasks a little bit more than I would have otherwise. So what does any of this analog crap have to do with the Steam Deck? I graduated college in 2019, and as you can imagine, a lot has changed in 5 years. I'm no longer in journalism for a variety of internal and external reasons, and in the years following, I've gone back to school and graduated from an expedited software development program that led me to my first real job out of university. While PC gaming handhelds have existed in some niche capacity for around 10 years, it wasn't until around the end of 2022, right after I graduated my computer program, when the more mainstream boom of powerful Windows and Linux handhelds started popping off with the arrival of the Aya Neo and the Odin from Ein, and of course the Steam Deck. My angle to most of these devices was through the lens of emulation and how much juice you could squeeze out of them when it came to playing as many games as possible on as many systems as possible. When I was a kid, my dream device was a box with every game console in it at once, like a combo PS2, GameCube, and Xbox. The idea was given to me by a friend who insisted that it was a real thing, but it was thousands of dollars and only available in Australia. Knowing what I know now about the video game market, it obviously wasn't a real product. If anything, it was a personal project someone shared on a forum, and the last place it probably would have been exclusively released if it was real would be Australia. In the last few years, pocket emulation handhelds started giving us a taste of that device my friend believed was real. I've covered the Retroid Pocket line a little bit when those first started achieving what I wanted out of a handheld, but as much as I liked them in theory, I felt the actual gaming experience was a little too janky to sink considerable time into for one specific reason. I am a hardware purist, but let me clarify what I mean by that. Emulation is incredible. It's absolutely something I use all the time to play my favorite games on more modern hardware with the convenience of upscaling and modern controllers. I also think it's incredibly important for the preservation of video games and always will be. The all-digital future worries me because of issues of ownership. We are already starting to see the issues of it. Delisted games are becoming a common occurrence because of expiring licenses, even if you paid for copies legitimately. And the always online and always updating cycle of games means content can be stripped away as soon as renegotiations for music come due. When it comes to it, emulation is one of the few ways you can play original releases that have yet to be made available on modern storefronts or in subscription services like Game Pass or the shamefully undersupported Nintendo Switch Online Virtual Console replacements. Emulation is good. It is necessary. However, when I play a game for the first time, especially for the channel, playing on an original console gives me a baseline for what I and anyone else can expect. Quirks, slowdowns, frame rate consistency, etc. Whatever it may be, that's how it originally played, and that's how it'll play now. I don't have to worry about if the jank I come across or flawless frame rates on the other side of the coin are a result of an emulator. Emulation can surely make things better, but a game will always play at its worst on original hardware. But when I would play games on the Retroid, it would often miss the baseline for what I wanted. So while I used it for a lot of N64 racing games and Tecmo Bowl 2022, I didn't enjoy using it for much of anything else. I eventually started looking for something that handled emulation better than I had gotten before. I pre-ordered an Ein Odin with a dock that flaunted retro controller ports. The Steam Deck wasn't even on my radar because the price was a bit higher than I wanted to spend, and I had never had a gaming PC. Instead, I had been on a Mac since 2008 when I got my first laptop for school and eventually inherited my grandpa's iMac. The only Steam games I had were from 2011 when the PlayStation Network hack happened and sent that whole ecosystem into a tailspin, and I convinced myself I would definitely be gaming on a MacBook from here on out. But in the extended time I waited on my Odin to ship, production of the Steam Deck evened out and became more readily available, and with that more content creators got their hands on them. Also in that time I was hearing questionable things about the early quality of the Ein dock and how hit and miss their customer service was when dealing with first-gen issues. I started getting cold feet, and after seeing what the Steam Deck was capable of in terms of emulation, I started thinking about taking my money to Valve instead. Since I had saved up for the Odin months before, I continued saving more money, and buying a Steam Deck became a bit more realistic than it was at first. Plus, with the full support of Valve and the whole Steam library behind it, I could finally catch up on a ton of PC games and Xbox PC exclusives I'd missed out on as a PlayStation person the last couple of gens. I took the plunge. 2 weeks later in October 2022, it arrived, and the first thing I did was install EmuDeck and dig into some PS2 games. It has been years since I played Madden because it's an unchanging piece of garbage that is riddled with bugs. I installed ESPN 2K5, the game's so good EA had to buy the NFL exclusivity rights in the middle of the night to stop losing the battle. And it runs beautifully on PCSX2, the PlayStation 2 emulator that ships with EmuDeck. That got me thinking about what possibilities were held within the Steam Deck. Surely there was no way I could play Jet Set Radio Future, right? Well, thanks to a very experimental emulator called Zemu, I could. I never need anything else. This will do forever. But it doesn't just stop there. What about Wii U, or even Switch? Yeah, like the Dreamcast with Bleem back in the day, the Steam Deck can actively emulate a current competitor on the market. You can even dock it and connect a controller and play on your TV or monitor. I've taken my whole collection of games you see here and have digitized them to have them on the go across almost every system you can think of. All of these games here are dumped from my collection. Don't try to verify that. And while PS3 and Xbox 360 have a long way to go, you'd be surprised about the compatibility. Even games like the leaked build of GoldenEye for Xbox Live Arcade are running here. I got to play Fallout New Vegas in Las Vegas. And with the emulator presence being so strong, I was able to dive into mods for emulated games. It wasn't long before I got to thinking, wouldn't it be better to play NFL 2K5 with modern rosters? Too bad. Oh wait, there's a mod tool for save files. I bet I could use the modding tools to tweak the save file, and now we are in business. I have wanted to play old football games like NFL 2K and NFL Street with modern rosters forever, and it is a serious hurdle if you want to do it on console. But with the Steam Deck, it's pretty effortless. My first few months were filled with little surprises like that. The Steam Deck isn't a game console in the traditional sense. You can't go to Best Buy and buy Steam Deck exclusives. But that also means you aren't locked into an ecosystem or single digital storefront format like you would be with a PlayStation or Xbox. You can install software from Steam, obviously, but you can go reach outside of that garden to GOG or Epic Games or... The Steam Deck is freed from the obstacles traditional console hardware is bogged down by. while at the same time still maintaining a console-like front end for accessibility, while hiding a full desktop OS in the background that you can access at any time. And you can't talk about how easy it is to run most software without talking about how that works. The secret sauce is Proton. In very basic terms, Proton is a compatibility layer of code that allows Windows applications to run natively on the Steam Deck and Linux in general. It's a joint-based effort between Valve and Codeweavers. They have worked together to create Proton out of a fork of Wine, another compatibility layer that has existed and has been worked on since 1993. Neither Proton nor Wine are emulators or virtual environments. In fact, Wine is short for the recursive acronym, Wine is not an emulator. Proton takes full advantage of the power inside of the hardware. It's native. It busts open the doors to what the Steam Deck can do and run. It's how Valve has managed to support a lot of Steam's ever-growing catalog of games without Linux ports, and there are so many that work, they have tried to add a verification system to make it easy to figure out what does work. It's also worthless. While games will appear as verified, playable, or unsupported, I've never found an unsupported game I can't play, and in some cases when playable ranked games eventually get their verified badge, they get worse. Watch closely as Bethesda puts another failure in the lost column.
It just works.
Look, I can understand how hard it is to check every game with a fine-tooth comb, especially when Steam has as many games as it does, with more being added by the minute. That is where a strong community comes in. Enter ProtonDB, a crowdsourced list of games that work and don't work, and how to make them perform as well as possible on Linux and Steam Deck alike. Thanks to external plugins for the Steam Deck through an add-on called Decompilation, you can add a link to every game that allows you to go straight to the games page on ProtonDB and tweak the game to run properly, and let you see how well you can expect to play it at a glance. The only games that have a consistent issue on Steam Deck are games that use anti-cheat software because Linux doesn't get a ton of developmental support from the companies that support that. That doesn't really affect me too much, but you have to jump through some pretty significant hoops to play some online games. You might even have to go as far as installing Windows. But what truly changed everything for me was having a fully fledged Linux computer on the go. I've used a lot of Raspbian working with Raspberry Pis. Just ask me about my summer last year working in 120-degree heat in a warehouse trying to make an underpowered and overheating Raspberry Pi act as the center point of a stress testing machine and a database for industrial products. But that also meant my only experience with Linux was a hobbyist computer that cost, at one point in time, less than $50 while running in suboptimal conditions. I also have the daily displeasure of figuring out new and fresh problems Windows places upon itself with intrusive updates that no one asked for. Once I really dug my claws into understanding Linux, I was hooked. 75% of my deck is playing games. The rest is pushing to see how far and how weird my whims on the Steam Deck can go, and so far the Steam Deck has never said, no, you can't do that. I am free of adware, baked-in malware through Edge, and walled-guarded limitations, allowing me to escape from the blend of what I hate about Windows and Mac OS. I started simple with the updated NFL player rosters, but it wasn't long until I started pushing the envelope with games I hadn't played since I was a kid on my grandma's beige gateway that ran Windows 98. I'm talking Hot Wheels Crash, Midtown Madness, Lego Island. These games can all be installed using a program called Lutris that kind of brute forces executable files into installing and running using Wine and Proton, and in some cases they work even better than they would on a native PC. Midtown Madness 2, for example, has a sound bug that requires a patch to fix the audio on Windows XP and later, but since you can use Lutris to install the game on the Windows 98 version of Wine, you don't have to worry about it. And then you can add it directly to your Steam library so you can take advantage of Steam's robust controller options. You can also install PC mods. I installed the enhanced edition of Silent Hill 2, which you saw in my video on that. It looks fantastic, especially on the OLED screen. I also got the Resident Evil 4 HD texture pack working. The Linux distribution on the Steam Deck is based on the power user-focused Arch Linux, a distro based on giving the user control above all else. It's the project car of the Linux space, but it's also powerful as hell. And that project car has been the foundation on which I have built my church to Gabe Newell. However, by default from Valve, a lot of that control is hidden away, probably for a good reason. It protects new users like me from totally bricking the system. But you can still work around that limitation using the power of sudo and installing DistroBox and installing different command line based distributions of Linux that basically tells your deck, hey, I'm not actually your version of Linux anymore, I'm actually Ubuntu now. And the Steam Deck will go like, yeah, I don't care, you already got to this point, who am I to stop you? And using DistroBox, I managed to install and compile the PC version of Link to the Past directly on the Steam Deck. I even used the deck in a pinch as a portable software development station when my computer was in the shop. But how does any of this matter? Look at it like this. What started as an excuse to load up on emulators and catch up on PC games I've never been exposed to became an opportunity to build myself a new tool chest and skill set that would actively help me in my new career path. Because this is all in my alley. I am in IT and broadcast engineering. I have to deal with software weirdness all day long, and the Steam Deck gave me a new way to learn and solve problems and reach goals. I can say, here's the destination, let's work backward from there. I can also create a mental flow of data from point A to point B and check each step in the line where breakage might happen. Similarly to how the journal and pen changed how I organize my life and helped me create good habits and maintain consistency, the Steam Deck left a lasting impression on how I approach computing when it comes to troubleshooting and figuring out interesting solutions to very specific problems. This thing has become one of my most important objects in my life. It inspired me to build my own gaming PC that I love, but even as much as I use that, I still get plenty of mileage out of the Steam Deck when my fiance is watching TV, or if I want to play something before work and I don't want a ton of speakers blaring at me in the morning. It can still handle a ton of what I want to play, and my backlog of games is shrinking by the week because of it. I see a future where it remains a tool I use on a pretty much everyday basis. It slots perfectly into my schedule as an on-the-go gaming powerhouse that lets me tap into the past and present of gaming while continuing to educate me on Linux before I ultimately make the permanent switch over to that OS on my next computer. So what purchases have you integrated into your day-to-day? Let me know in the comments. I love getting recommendations I can impulse buy. I know I was gone for a year. So much has happened. I moved in with my girlfriend, got engaged, so now she's my fiance. I got my friggin' tonsils removed, and got a job I love going to every day. Still, I miss making videos and sharing them with you all. I hope another year won't pass before my next upload, so stay tuned if you like. This video has been long enough already, so I'll just say, take care of yourself, be nice to yourself, and do something that excites you. See you in the next one.